To the outside world, Omen was everything a man should be: successful, responsible, charming, and dependable. He had a good job as a respected manager at a major company. He dressed sharp every day and carried himself with a quiet confidence that made others naturally admire him. At home, he had a beautiful, kind-hearted wife named Ophir and two smart, joyful children who looked up to him like he was a hero. Neighbors would nod approvingly when they saw him walking hand in hand with his family on weekends. At church, he was always composed, respectful, generous in his offerings. To those who knew him from a distance, Omen was the gold standard of a man, a role model, a family man, a true gentleman. And Oprah believed that with all her heart. In her eyes, she was one of the lucky ones. She had a man who never yelled, never cheated, never left her wanting for anything. He came home every night, remembered birthdays and anniversaries, and kissed her goodbye every morning like it was the first time. She trusted him deeply. She never felt the need to check his phone, question his whereabouts, or second-guess his words. Their home, as far as she could see, was built on love, respect, and peace. But what Effort didn't know was that the man she loved so dearly had two faces, one for the home and one for the world. At work, Omen was not the same devoted husband and father. In the privacy of his office, behind closed doors, he was someone else entirely. He used his position as a manager not to lead or mentor, but to manipulate and exploit. He had power, real power, the kind that decides who gets hired, who gets promoted, who stays, and who leaves. And instead of using that power responsibly, he turned it into a weapon for his own selfish desires. Whenever a young woman walked into his office looking for a job, he would size her up before even glancing at her resume. Then, with a practiced smile, he'd deliver the same line: "You're qualified, but around here, it helps if we understand each other better." It was code. Everyone in the building knew what it meant. Some women stood up and walked out, offended and angry. But others, usually the ones desperate for a chance, hesitated, and those were the ones Omen preyed on. He offered jobs in exchange for silence and submission. And for time, the department he managed became a place where women whispered behind closed doors, where fear lingered in the hallways, and where his reputation was both feared and untouchable. Despite all this, no one said anything. His colleagues knew. They heard the rumors, saw the patterns, watched the same story play out again and again. But nobody reported him. Why would they? Jobs were hard to come by, and Omen had influence. Speaking out meant risking your own career. So the silence grew thicker, the secrets deeper, the secrets deeper. Meanwhile, Omen continued to live his double life flawlessly. At home, he played the loving husband and proud father. He never slipped. He never gave her a reason to question him. He answered calls in front of her, smiled during family dinners, and acted like nothing in the world could shake his commitment to them. And for years, he got away with it. He thought he was too smart to ever get caught. He believed he could control both worlds forever: the loyal family man at home and the manipulative predator at work. But the thing about living a lie is that it eventually catches up with you. The mask can only stay on for so long before it starts to crack. And Omen, in his arrogance, had no idea how close he was to losing everything. His perfect image, his quiet deceit, and his illusion of control were all about to come undone with the arrival of a woman who would change the game completely. Everything started to change the day Shikami walked into Omen's office. She was young, confident, and stunning in a way that made heads turn the moment she entered her room. Tall with smooth skin, a killer smile, and a body that could distract even the most disciplined man, she had an air of self-assurance that Omen found irresistible. From the second he saw her, he was hooked. He barely glanced at her resume and was far more interested in her looks than her qualifications. When he made the usual suggestive comment about understanding each other, she didn't seem surprised. Word about Omen's behavior had already made its way around town, and Shikami knew exactly what he was implying. Instead of acting shocked or walking out like others, she played along, smiling sweetly and giving him the green light he wanted. And just like that, she was hired. But unlike the others before her, Shikami wasn't there to just enjoy the perks. She had her own plan. Shikami knew how to play the game. She let Omen think he was in control, but in truth, she was the one pulling the strings. He spoiled her with money, jewelry, designer clothes, and even an iPhone. He took her out to expensive restaurants, treated her like a queen, and showed her off in ways that made the office whisper. Shikami loved every bit of it, and the more Omen gave, the more she took. But she wasn't wasting time just enjoying the gifts, she was plotting how to make her position permanent. One night, after confiding in a friend about the fear of losing Omen to another woman, she was advised to see a local herbalist known for powerful love spells. Desperate to secure her hold on Omen, she followed through. The herbalist gave her a tiny bottle of black powder with strict instructions. Mix it into his food or drink, and he would belong to her completely. Shikami didn't hesitate. She paid handsomely, thanked the old man, and rushed back home to put the plan into motion. That night, Shikami invited Omen over for dinner and cooked his favorite meal, pounded yam with a goosey soup. She sprinkled the powder into the food and drink just before serving him. Omen, unaware of the trap, ate and drank everything. By the next morning, the change was undeniable. He was calling her constantly, sending money without her asking, and ignoring every other woman around him, including the new girl he had just started pursuing. His colleagues noticed something was off. "That man is finished," one cleaner whispered. Watching Omen follow Shikami around like a lost puppy, back at home, things were falling apart. Anfer and the kids were struggling financially, with school fees unpaid and food supplies running low. When she asked about the money, Omen lied, claiming the company was behind on payments. In reality, he had emptied his account on Shikami. With the charm working perfectly, she had total control over him, and she knew it. Omen had no idea what hit him. He thought he was in love, but he was really just under a spell, blindly giving everything to someone who never truly cared about him. Omen was completely under Shikami's spell. He couldn't go a day without hearing her voice, and he began showering her with even more money and gifts. If she so much as hinted at needing something, he would deliver it before she even asked twice. When she told him she wanted a better apartment, Omen didn't even blink. Even though his finances were already stretched thin, he borrowed 2 million naira from his company's cooperative just to rent her a luxury apartment. When he handed her the keys, she squealed with excitement and asked if the place was in her name. Of course, he had already made it, so Shikami was thrilled. She didn't even bother to keep up appearances at work anymore. She quit her job and told everyone she didn't need to work since her baby was taking care of her. Meanwhile, at home, Omen's wife Over was struggling to keep the house running. Bills were piling up, the kids' school fees were overdue, and there was barely enough food in the fridge. Things reached a breaking point a week before Valentine's Day. Omen came home and told her that his company was sending him on a 2-week business trip. He looked serious, and Uffer didn't question him. Why would she? She helped him pack his bags and even prayed for his safe journey, thinking he was working hard for their future. But instead of heading to the airport or an official meeting, Omen went straight to Shikami's apartment. "Baby, I'm here to spend 2 weeks with you just like you wanted," he said, grinning proudly. Shikami was overjoyed. They dressed in matching outfits, cooked meals together, and acted like a couple on honeymoon. Meanwhile, Over waited patiently for the money Omen had promised to send. Day after day passed, and nothing came. She called him, and each time he gave an excuse. The company is still processing it, or just be patient. She was worried, not suspicious. She honestly thought her husband was being mistreated by his workplace. But on February 13th, the day before Valentine's, she decided she couldn't wait any longer. Dressed neatly and holding her purse tight, she marched into Omen's office to demand answers. What she discovered left her numb. The R officer stared at her in confusion when she asked about her husband's trip. "Madam, your husband isn't on any business assignment. He took a 2-week leave to spend time with his family," one of them said. Ofer's world started spinning. "He's been paid? You're not owing him?" she asked again, just to be sure. "No, we paid him. He's on personal leave." Just then, Omen's department head, Mr. Along, walked in. When he heard the situation, he realized something was very wrong. Ofer's hands trembled as she whispered, "Where is my husband?" What started as a simple visit turned into a desperate search. And little did they know, Omen was a few blocks away, dressed in red and white like a Valentine's Day teenager, being spoon-fed by the same woman who had bewitched him and stolen his family's peace. When Mr. Ung realized Omen wasn't on any official trip and had been paid in full, alarm bells went off. He gathered the company's chief security officer and a young employee named Toby, who casually mentioned that Omen lived on his street, and together, they went looking for him. After some asking around, a local gatekeeper confirmed that Omen was inside, living with a woman he openly referred to as his wife. Mr. Ong and the others were stunned. "His wife?" They echoed. "Yes, tall, fine lady. Her name is Shikami," the man replied casually. Following a neighbor's tip, they finally found Omen and Shikami at a nearby restaurant wearing matching Valentine outfits. Shikami was feeding Omen like a child, laughing and calling him her king. The sight made the men stop in their tracks. Was this really the same Omen? The respected manager who once spoke so professionally and carried himself with pride? He looked like a high schooler on his first date, completely oblivious to reality. Mr. Ong couldn't hold it in. He marched over to their table and called Omen's name. But instead of reacting with shock or embarrassment, Omen simply looked annoyed. "Why are you disturbing my Valentine's Day?" he asked, clearly under the influence of something far beyond logic. "Your wife and children are at home starving while you're here playing house with your side chick," Mr. Aeon yelled. Shikami flipped her hair and responded coldly. "Excuse me? I'm not a side chick. I'm his real wife now. It was madness." Omen refused to leave with them and even threatened to call the police for harassment. The restaurant had gone silent, everyone watching the drama unfold. Mr. Along shook his head in disbelief and whispered to the XO, "This isn't love, this is witchcraft." That same night, desperate to break whatever had possessed Omen, Mr. Aong visited his own trusted herbalist. The man gave him a red handkerchief and said, "Once you wipe his face with this, his eyes will open." The next morning, Valentine's Day, Ofer returned to the office in tears. She was exhausted, scared, and demanding answers. "Where is my husband?" she cried. Mr. Anong gently took her outside and explained the full truth. Omen had not traveled for work. He was with another woman, completely under a spell. At first, Ofer refused to believe it, but when Mr. Ong offered to take her to the house, she insisted on going along. When they arrived and knocked, Omen opened the door dressed in red pants and a white shirt, like he was heading to a high school Valentine's party. Shikami was right behind him, wearing a matching outfit and looking just as smug. "Who invited these people to ruin our morning?" she snapped. Without a word, Mr. Ong pulled out the red handkerchief and gently wiped Omen's face. Immediately, Omen froze. His eyes blinked rapidly, like someone waking up from a deep sleep. He looked at Shikami, then saw his real wife standing there, fuming. Confused, he asked, "What am I doing here?" It was clear the spell had been broken. But for Ofer, the damage had already been done, and she wasn't about to walk away quietly. Omen stood in the doorway like a man just waking up from a nightmare, confused and disoriented. Before he could say a word, Ofer exploded. Her pain had been bottled up for too long, and now it came pouring out like a storm. She pushed past him and went straight for Shikami, eyes blazing. "You shameless witch. You dared to use a charm on my husband?" Before anyone could stop her, she grabbed Shikami by the dress and dragged her across the room like a bag of trash. Shikami screamed, trying to fight back, but Uffer was too furious. Then, in a move no one expected, Uffer bent down and bit her on the chest hard. Shikami shrieked and jumped back like she had touched fire. "You bit me," she cried. "Yes," Uffer snapped. "And if I ever see you near him again, I'll bite the other one too." Shikami ran off screaming, barefoot with her dress half torn, disappearing down the street like a mad woman. Omen stood frozen, watching everything unfold, too shocked to speak. Mr. Ong tried to hold back a laugh. "Let's leave before this turns into a crime scene," he whispered. Back at home, the reality hit Omen like a hammer. His wife had packed her bags. "Please, my love?" he begged, falling to his knees. "I didn't know what I was doing. She used something on me. I swear it wasn't me, but Ofer wasn't buying it." "You expect me to believe you were just some helpless victim? You were cheating long before she came into the picture. You let her in because you wanted to." Omen cried harder, holding her legs, begging her not to go, but Ofer had made up her mind. "I'm taking the kids and we're leaving. You can stay here and live with your shame." With that, she walked out the door, their children in tow, without looking back. Omen collapsed on the floor, crying like a child. It was the worst Valentine's Day of his life. Everything he had, the family, the respect, the love, was gone in a flash, and he had no one to blame but himself. The next day, Omen, still a mess, decided to return to Shikami's house. If nothing else, he wanted his money back. "She took millions from me," he muttered angrily. But when he arrived, the gatekeeper just laughed. "You never hear," he said with a smirk. "That fine lady, she don't craze." Omen's heart dropped. "What do you mean she's gone mad?" The man shrugged. "Since yesterday, she's been running around the compound like a lunatic, talking to herself, rolling in the dirt. They had to take her to the psychiatric hospital." Omen stood there stunned. The woman he gave everything to was now lost to madness. His money? For 2 weeks, Omen lived like a ghost. His house was quiet, cold, and empty. No children laughing, no warm meals, no Offer singing in the kitchen. He called her every day, sent dozens of messages, left voicemails begging for forgiveness, but she didn't respond. Eventually, she blocked his number. His suspension from work only made things worse. The silence was deafening. He sat alone every night, replaying everything in his head. How he met Shikami, the lies he told, the charm, the money he wasted, the look on Ofer's face when she saw him in that ridiculous Valentine outfit. He had lost everything that mattered because he thought he was untouchable. Now, he was just a broken man with an empty house and an even emptier heart. When his suspension ended, Omen returned to work with his head down. The first thing he did was walk straight to Mr. Aong's office and fall to his knees. "Sue, please help me talk to my wife. I've tried everything. I don't want to lose her." Mr. Aong stared at him for a long moment, then sighed. "So you finally see what you almost destroyed?" Omen nodded. "Yes, sir. I was blind, but now I see." They arranged to visit Ofer's father with gifts, yam, drinks, even a fat goat. When they arrived, the old man glared at Omen. "So you're the one who disgraced my daughter?" Omen dropped to the floor and pleaded, "Please, Papa. I was under a spell. I didn't know what I was doing. I've lost everything. I need my wife back." Ofer walked out from the house, arms crossed. "You again," she snapped. "What do you want now?" Omen looked up at her, his eyes filled with regret. "I'm sorry. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I promise I'll never make the same mistake again." There was silence. Her father looked at her gently. "My child, it's your decision." After a long pause, Ofer finally said, "Get up. Let's go home." But don't test me again. Omen jumped up with joy, tears running down his face. He had been given a second chance and he wasn't going to waste it. This story, though dramatic, mirrors real-life situations more often than we'd like to admit. People let their egos, desires, and momentary temptations destroy years of love, trust, and family. Omen thought he could juggle two lives, that he was in control, but the truth is, when you play with fire, you eventually get burned. His journey back to reality was painful, humiliating, and costly. Not everyone is lucky enough to be forgiven after making such mistakes. This tale is a reminder that real love requires loyalty, honesty, and accountability. You can't build a home while sneaking out the back door. For anyone listening, husbands, wives, partners, never take your family for granted. The thrill of the moment is never worth the wreckage it leaves behind. Omen learned that lesson the hard way. Hopefully, the rest of us won't have to.